I'm Chris Ouwerkerk.
I'm Doug Millington.
And we're in the Citizens Alliance of Prince Edward Island. And we thought this year, with the District 10 by-election and the tight time frame, that it would be nice to try to have a way for candidates to answer some questions that hadn't been brought up at the CBC forum or in other public settings.
And answering in a pretty tight timeline as well.
Bit of a lightning round.
Bit of a lightning round.
So some of the candidates have gone out of their way to make time for us in this last week. Even though there obviously has been some voting already going on, there's still people that haven't voted yet. And we made a list. We actually put a call out to different environmental and social justice groups who all sent us questions. We edited them and compiled them and have asked the candidates the same questions.
And they've been doing their best under, as I say, tight timeline. We've asked them to stick to 90 seconds
or less
for an answer, or less. And it's been interesting so far. We hope you enjoy the results.
And we have a wonderful volunteer who's putting it online for us so that people can have a chance to watch them. So we hope you enjoy them and that you vote if you're in District 10. So we found each candidate that was willing to give us a little time, and we're going to ask the same questions. And first is Chris. Will you go ahead and say your name so we'll pronounce it properly?
Absolutely.
Great.
Chris Van Ouwerkerk.
Okay. So thanks for making the time for us.
Okay.
And we'll start. Doug is here, and Doug and I will alternate asking questions. These were presented to us or given to us by a wide range of groups that weren't perhaps included in other forums so far, like the CBC forum. So it's mainly environmental and social justice groups.
Okay. This question is from the Fridays for Future group. The PEI government has pledged to reach net zero electricity by 2030 and net zero GHGs by 2040. Whether or not you're elected, what will you do to help ensure that the PEI government fulfills this pledge?
Yeah, I think it's important that we continue to have a dialogue with the experts, to continue meeting with community organizations that have interest in this and to have expertise and knowledge in it, and then to use that knowledge to pressure government, no matter who's in during the time that we need to utilize and implement these ideas. So pressure on government is the most important thing that we can do to make sure that it happens. If elected and down the road we form government, then we can start to actually implement some of it. And if not, then we can certainly pressure sitting governments to make sure that it is.
Okay. So the second question is from the PEI Working Group for a Livable Income. It's clear that the pandemic and the public health measures taken in response to it more deeply affect women, gender minorities, youth, people with disabilities, and BIPOC people than other groups. What are the best ways to ensure a just and equitable recovery for everyone, regardless of gender, age, ability, and race?
Yeah, right off the bat, I'm very aware of my place in society. I'm privileged, I'm a straight white male, and what I've learned from these groups is immense. Right off the bat, these inequities have existed long before the pandemic. The pandemic has shined a light on just how inequitable some of our situations are. So we need to really focus on how we change our society to be more equitable. It needs to be a just recovery. And I think by using perspectives and hopefully engaging and encouraging people of minorities and people who are impoverished and just anyone from impacted demos to actually have a chance to bring their voice to the House and to government.
Okay, great. Thank you.
So the next question is just from a concerned citizen. Recently there's been concern over land deals involving the Irvings and the Buddhist monks, to name a couple. Locally, and that's provincially, locally in District 10, the Towers Road or Sherwood Crossing development has drawn criticism for a lack of public input around disappearing green space. What steps would you take to ensure that the public is meaningfully consulted every step of the process about privately funded projects and deals that affect public lives.
Absolutely. So just last night I was out to a public meeting on the municipal side of things that impacted 3 different developments in District 10. It didn't specifically cover Towers Road. That'll, I'm sure, be a future meeting. And while it's not strictly a provincial issue, it's one that we can advocate on behalf of citizens, one that we can engage and make a plan. The biggest thing is that we need a long-term plan for the cities, for the province, and it has to be in concert with each other. Building relationships with decision makers from all levels is the most important thing we can do, and then taking those relationships to the doorstep and making sure people feel like they've been listened to. There's always going to be a push and a pull between communities that exist and ones that are developing. So it's about meaningfully consulting everybody and doing that to the best of our abilities.
The fourth question is from the Citizens Alliance of PEI. In recovering from COVID-19, how important is it to incorporate the principles of a Green New Deal to achieve a more equitable and sustainable society? And as you know, a Green New Deal is not a Green Party New Deal, it's the Green New Deal.
Yeah, from my understanding of the Green New Deal, there's a lot of social justice aspects to it, a lot of environmental aspects to it, and that speaks to the Green Party in a deeper way than I think any party. We have to look to the future, and we have to do it in a way that makes sure that these groups of people who have historically been either disenfranchised or not treated in the same way as others, that they're brought to the table. We need to make sure that we have a planet to leave for future generations. So by incorporating some of the principles of the Green New Deal into our long-term plan for Prince Edward Island, that's going to allow us to grow, to do it in a healthy and sustainable manner, while also bringing much needed voices to the table. There's no doubt that we have a lot of work to do on that, but the principles of the Green New Deal certainly give us a framework for how to proceed.
Okay, thank you.
This question is from the PEI Fight for Affordable Housing. Currently, we typically support affordable rental housing with taxpayer-funded grants and loans to private developers. Would you support provincial investment in long-term agreements with municipalities, nonprofits, and cooperatives to provide nonprofit and public affordable housing? And I think there was a bit of subtext to this question. We boiled it down a bit, but in terms of long-term, we were talking about like 50, 60 years rather than the typical 10, 15 that you see now.
Yeah, absolutely. We need to be realistic and know that there's always going to be private investment that goes hand in hand with growing our communities. But that doesn't mean that the government doesn't have a place and can be separate from that. So long-term deals, I think they're important. I think we need a long-term plan to go with that. And that plays back to how do we engage the municipalities, how do we engage the citizenship to make sure that the long-term plan is fluid for a changing community, but also is there and concrete and sustainable. So at the end of the day, I think absolutely we need those investments, and we have to kind of do that in concert with private investments from a different realm. So it's about realistically getting us out of this crisis right now, while looking to the future and framing a long-term vision. So in short, absolutely.
It was a yes/no question, wasn't it? We were trying to avoid those. The next question is from the PEI Organic Producers Co-op. What action would you take as the District 10 MLA to ensure that a proportion of the food products utilized in the new school nutrition program, as well as in other provincially operated institutions like hospitals and long-term care facilities, that the food is locally sourced and organic?
This is something that means a lot to me. I work in the food industry, the local food industry to be specific. I own a butcher shop that is purely local. Everything we do is island-based. So I know that a program like that and kind of the voice to push it is not only important, but it will make the recovery of COVID and the long-term planning much easier on our primary producers, who are a backbone of our society. So I will apply as much pressure as it takes to ensure that as high of a percentage of the food that is used in these programs is locally sourced. It benefits our producers, it benefits our communities, it benefits our health, and that's a big one for me.
Thank you.
This next question is from various groups. What are your thoughts on basic income guarantee?
Yeah, I think it's an important future step. I think it's something that we need. Anytime I'm asked about income, I try to frame it from the perspective of the impoverished, because those are the ones that are most impacted by income. And we see the benefits that the CERB has had on our most impoverished communities. It's brought people into our economy that haven't historically been there. Now, that's speaking in general terms. Obviously, there's going to be some people falling through the cracks, but for the most part, the people who have received this funding from the government have been able to take part in an economy that they haven't necessarily been able to in the past. So that is living proof of the benefits of a basic income guarantee. We've seen it in Manitoba when it was piloted decades ago, just the impact that it can have on mental health, on physical health, the well-being of a community. So I think as we move forward in the future with technology kind of replacing jobs and the number of jobs decreasing, it's not going to just be important, but imperative.
Okay. The next question is from the Citizens Alliance of PEI. We got to organize this, so we got more questions. How do you feel the minority government has worked?
It's been really beneficial. There's no doubt about that. It's the first one in our history, and we've seen 8 bills from the opposition get passed. That's almost unheard of. I think it's created a level of respect amongst the parties that has not historically been there, and a dialogue, which is so important in the modern age for getting things done in a way that reflects the communities that we live in. So it's been nothing but beneficial. I am very hopeful that we keep it that way, and that's the best part.
It's the time. Thank you.
Okay. Let's see, from Blue Dot PEI and Environmental Rights Working Group as well. Would you support an environmental Bill of Rights?
Yeah, absolutely. I'd like to hear more about what that would entail. I'd like to meet with the group and find out exactly how we should frame it, because it's an important part of being human, is our interaction with nature, and that is a clear-cut yes.
From the Islanders for Proportional Representation, that's another yes or no question. Would you vote to support proportional representation?
I already have. I think a lot of people have.
I should follow up on this question, and I think I meant to. We now have a government and an official opposition that both were in favor of PR during past times and in the campaign, but we really haven't moved on it. Now, how would you want to help move this forward then?
Yeah, it's an ongoing conversation within the caucus and within the Green Party about the way to best bring about this change. You know, there is such a thing as voter fatigue, and after going through 2 referendums on proportional representation, the fear would be that people would either not turn out or kind of change their tune on it just because of the fact that they've been asked a few times before. So I think it's about dialogue, it's about working it out to find out what the best kind of strategy is to implement this change, while also respecting Islanders and their voice that they've already brought to the table twice.
Thank you.
Next question from the Coalition for the Protection of PEI Water. Are you in favor of maintaining the moratorium on high-capacity wells to protect PEI water? And what do you see as the major threats to our groundwater? It's a sort of a multi-part. What are the major threats to groundwater, and what steps would you take to address those?
Yeah, so I think we need the Water Act to be ratified as soon as possible. Mm-hmm. And the only thing holding that back right now is the necessary science to actually frame the regulations. We need that. On high capacity wells, there's a lot of science out there that has already been proven and able to show that it is detrimental to our water on the island. But at the end of the day, we need more science. We need the science that we can base our regulations off of. I think we all know that there's a lot of corporate money behind some of the reports that have been produced on high capacity wells, and we need to have a balanced approach to how we look at those reports, which means that we have to have independently sourced studies on what really impacts our water table on the island. So I'd like to see us as a government really invest in level-headed, science-based, peer-reviewed research. And that's how we frame up our regulations for the Water Act. From there, we'll know exactly what the detriments to our water is and the way that we can recover from it. So I see ratifying the Water Act with the necessary regulations as the single most important step to protecting our water on this island. As for high capacity wells, like I said, it's fairly well studied at this point to show that they are detrimental to our water table. And I'd like to see science like what we've done on that established across the board to make sure that we get that Water Act ratified and done right.
Could I follow up on that one? Because I've been kind of soaked in this part with the Coalition for the Protection of Water. To get that kind of research is going to take a while. Would that mean holding back the regulations and holding back the ratification of the Water Act until 3, 4, 5-year studies are done?
I don't think it would necessarily have to.
Okay.
To use a pun, I think that would have to be a little bit fluid. And that we'd have to be willing to adapt the regulations as we go. That being said, we have to do that in a meaningful way, which means not just making it seem like we're flipping and flopping all over the place on regulations, but actually establishing them with clear transparency that these might change as the science progresses.
All right. Oh, me. So what's a pressing issue in your district or something about the district that you'd like to work on or bring up?
Yeah, I struggle to think of one thing, and it's not even necessarily district specific, but just keeping promises. It boils down to that is, we've seen promises made at election times throughout the history of the island, and this by-election is no different. We've seen a school promised within the by-election period for Sherwood. We've seen expansions promised within the by-election period for West Royalty. the two major elementary schools in the riding within a short period of time. It's time to start keeping promises and making them at a time that doesn't just reek of political kind of trickery. But that's kind of goes for lots of things. The mental health campus, the fact that it was supposed to be shovels in the ground 30 days into the Premier's mandate, and here we are 18 months later with the rezoning done, with the building in much needed kind of state of repair, or at this point it needs to be torn down and replaced, and no movement. So keeping promises is the most important thing for, I think, any district, but especially right now in District 10, is making sure that promises are kept and pushing government to do that.
Anything else you'd like to bring up, or that's your turn to speak to ask that?
Well, I was just going to ask in general, you know, are we missing anything, any big issues provincially, locally that you could think of?
You know, I think we've touched on the biggest issues that I've heard. Developments and kind of the way it's been handled by all levels of government has been something I hear on the doorstep every day. I wish I had a magic wand to make people stop speeding, but I don't. But no, you know, for me, one of the biggest things is the mental health crisis that's going on, and I don't want it to be glossed over by any government, or any party, my own included. It is such an important issue. It is one that impacts Islanders of all walks of life, and I think we all know now that mental health issues don't discriminate. So going forward, I want to get the politics out of a few things, and that's one of them. That's definitely one of them. So hopefully we can do better for everybody on this island. That's all it comes down to for me.